People from former Soviet republics. What is something people who never lived under communism just don't get about communism? The furniture. Everything was heavy. The chairs, the tables, the cupboards. You could kill a man with a single dresser drawer. It was furniture built to survive an ideological collapse and 3 generations of family arguments. This is a very interesting detail. Thank you. I once inherited some Czech furniture, known as the cursed furniture, that weighed an absolute ton. We concluded it was made from the compressed sorrows of a nation. My dad used to say ladas were made from incorrectly sized plates for the tank industry. Didn't keep them from rusting, though. Yeah, the steel in cars and washing machines and refrigerators was insane, like a tank. It had to do with meeting insane production quotas based on weight, and also because home goods factories were usually retooled military factories. Office desks from the 30s to 50s weighed an enormous amount as well. My university had some areas still using ancient office furniture like that, and any time you had to try to move it around, was not fun. The weird gluts. You'd have no light bulbs in the entire city for 6 months, and then one day every store would be filled floor to ceiling with only light bulbs. My grandma still has a closet full of them from '88. She calls them the strategic light bulb reserve. This is the second light bulb story I've read so far. What is the deal with light bulbs? Here is a third one. In communist Romania there were no light bulbs in stores. If you needed one, the trick was to bring the spent light bulb at office and then replace one of the office light bulb with your spent light bulbs. But of course, don't get caught. Then the office light bulb would be replaced. Among European communist regimes, Romania was particularly hellish during the Ceausescu year. Women with fewer than 2 children and not pregnant would have occasional gynecological exams to make sure they were not using contraceptives or worse had not aborted. Thank God the family fled to France. Edit. The exact story is, all women were forced to go for a gynecological control every month, this monthly health control representing the requirement for receiving medical care. 8. The pregnancies detected were monitored until term. In this way, the possibilities to provoke an empirical abortion were almost totally annihilated. The law was extremely severe, numerous gynecologists as well as women who resorted to this method paying with years of prison their trial to avoid it. The source says that it was all women with fewer than 4 children, but this was Romania, so there was the law and the way it was applied, and I surmised that it was only strictly applied to women without children or with only 1 child, which is how it was told me, or that it depended on the region, social class, etc.
Hi guys, if you like my video, please just subscribe, drop a like and tap the bell, so you won't miss the next video. I'm already working on a new one for you, so see you.
I'm not directly from there, my father is. But I got to visit Budapest, Hungary, and its surroundings in the summer of 1983. As a 12-year-old American suburban kid, it was quite an eye-opening experience. It was like I'd stepped into a time machine and went back 25 years, old cars, old clothes, old everything. No commercial brands of anything, everything was generic and state-produced. Our dad told us to dress down so we wouldn't stand out in our American clothes. Military men with big guns stood on street corners and in front of important buildings. We were also told to be careful how we talked and not say anything negative about what we saw or heard while we were there, and not compare it to America in any way. That said, people were super friendly and supportive of each other, probably because they often had to be. My father had grown up as a street urchin in the city, had fled the country in his late teens, and actually had to sneak in and back out while my brother and I went through normal customs. He feared being found out, arrested and jailed, but wanted us to see his country and meet our Hungarian grandparents. We were there for about 3 weeks and I'll never forget the experience. It was truly like another world, one I've never seen since. Lived in Romania, towards the end of communism. I remember the constant electricity outages, the lack of heating or hot water. The 2 hours of TV per day, consisting mostly of speeches or praises for our dear leader. I remember yelling at my mum the chicken truck had arrived at the state grocery store and getting in line until she came down. Those chickens were just skin and bones. I remember the old chewing gum we had, that tasted like shit and was so hard you could not really chew it. I remember the sheer panic of my parents when I said a bad thing I heard on the street against Ceausescu. They were scared I might say something in kindergarten. Romania was uniquely mental as a communist state, though, thanks to Ceausescu's obsession with paying back every penny of a relatively small amount of foreign debt accrued in the late 70s/early 80s. He essentially directed almost all economic activity into exports to pay it off. When the dictatorship collapsed in 1989, Romania was pretty much unique in the world in being effectively debt-free. Not Soviet, but my mother-in-law grew up in communist China under Chairman Mao and all that. Being the right level of loyal was hard, even if you truly believed in it all, and many people honestly did due to the rampant brainwashing. If you did everything right, you'd be asked to join the local branch of the party. On the other hand, if you made too many mistakes, that had its own problems. You might get transferred somewhere crappy to be someone else's problem, or if you were deemed unfit for normal work you might even be assigned some backbreaking drudgery instead. My mother-in-law was a doctor, so even making small mistakes here and there wasn't an option she was willing to risk. She kept her head down, did her job, didn't make waves, and still got asked to join the local party several times. The standard way to refuse was, "Oh, I'm not good enough," but even that could only be used so many times. Outright refusal to join the party was seen as being a traitor, which could be deadly. Being in the party was good for the top person and precarious for everyone else. Some people wanted to do it because you got to enjoy a lot of luxuries, but most people just wanted to live their lives without possibly being purged on the whim of the leader. She said one way to get out of it was bribes, although that had its own risks, of course. Another was to have a baby. Despite officially being about gender equality, it was an open secret that the reality was far from equal, and mothers were seen as unreliable party members because of their tendency to put their kids first, especially if the kid happens to still be a baby. She told amazing stories about growing up in that time. Some of it was great, like how relatively safe it was. Much of it was terrible, like the way people disappeared for political reasons and you'd never know what happened to them, or the horrific famines that happened because of the rejection of agricultural science, Lysenkoism. But overall, her feeling was that it just got in the way. Most people just want to do their jobs, spend time with their families, and maybe have a hobby or two, but communism made all of those things harder or impossible. I worked with a lady from Russia back in the 90s. We were file clerks at a bank, like the lowest level job. She was this sweet little babushka-looking middle-aged lady. She would bring in Russian foods to potlucks. She said I reminded her of her son, Igor. We became friends and she told me about her life there. I was really surprised to learn that she had been a major in the Russian army and had a master's degree in electrical engineering. After the fall, parts of the army were disbanded, so she moved to the US with her kids. She said that even with her fairly privileged position in Russia, being a clerk in the US was a better quality of life. Soviet degrees and certifications meant nothing in the West. My ex's mom was a doctor in USSR. They got out on refugee status in the 80s and she started over and went to nursing school in the States. That's sadly often the case from all over the world. During my time at a local community college I tutored an older Vietnamese woman who had been a surgeon back in Vietnam, but because her husband was somehow associated with the American Army, they had to flee the country. She was struggling to get into the pharmacy tech program because she couldn't meet the English requirements. One of my proudest memories was having her come running into the tutoring lab waving her English 201 final paper that we had worked on for weeks with a high enough score to pass the class with a grade that would allow her into the tech program. This woman was absolutely acing the highest levels of math, chemistry, biology, etc., but couldn't get into an assistant program because of written English requirements. All while working who knows how many hours at the family's restaurant and raising their kids. Poland, 1980s. I remember my mom crying, because she accidentally left a small bag of sausages at the butcher's, and they were gone by the time she came back to pick them up. This was our monthly ration. I remember getting my hands on a can of Coca-Cola. I think some exchange student gave it to me. I took it to my school and showed it to absolutely everyone. I was the most interesting person in the school for a day. Right after communism fell, I remember being asked by a teacher to grab a piece of chalk, stand on a chair and draw a crown on top of the head of the Polish white eagle, our national emblem, present in every classroom. This royal symbol was forbidden during communist times. Every person who lived through communism will have such stories to tell. It was sad, scary, hopeless, and more often than not, surreal. The sheer lack of choice. Not like, oh, there's only 2 brands of ketchup. No, there is ketchup. And you'll be lucky if the store has it. And it tastes like red disappointment. I remember one winter my parents sent me to the local supermarket to buy candles because there were power cuts. I entered the shop and it only had 2 products, flour and sugar. Not different kinds or from different mills or anything like that. Just 2 entire aisles full with identical 1 kilogram paper bags, the rest of the store completely empty. No customers either. Just one cashier. I bought both, and I was too young to understand why, but my parents were pleased and said that was a very smart choice. By the way, you must have lived in a bougie place because I have seen ketchup in 1990 for the first time. It was considered a Western luxury product, like cola.